Have you ever wondered how one name can shake the world, even after death? Because in this true court case, the story didn't end in a courtroom. It began again years later when hidden documents resurfaced. This is not a story about rumors. This is a story about records, lawsuits, and unanswered questions. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case refuses to disappear. Have you ever wondered how one name can shake the world, even after death? Because in this true court case, the story didn't end in a courtroom. It began again years later when hidden documents resurfaced. This is not a story about rumors. This is a story about records, lawsuits, and unanswered questions. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case refuses to disappear. It started quietly. No headlines, no breaking news alerts. Just a court filing buried deep in legal archives. But what it contained would send shockwaves across the internet. The name was familiar. Jeffrey EPSTEIN, a name already associated with one of the most controversial legal scandals in modern history. But this filing wasn't about the past everyone knew. It was about something new, something unresolved, something that reopened questions the world thought were closed. In the months following his death, civil lawsuits began to emerge. Not criminal, civil, which means they weren't about prison. They were about truth, accountability, and compensation. Several individuals came forward, filing claims against the Epstein estate. They weren't asking for revenge. They were asking for recognition, for validation, for closure. But what made this true court case different wasn't just the claims. It was the documents. Court filings revealed sealed records, files that had been protected for years, testimonies that were never made public, names that were never confirmed. The court now had to decide, should these documents remain sealed? Or should they be released? The judge assigned to the case faced a difficult decision. On one hand, privacy. On the other, transparency. On one hand, legal procedure. On the other, public interest. The courtroom became the battlefield not for Epstein, but for information. The lawyers argued intensely. Some said releasing the documents would cause harm. Others said keeping them sealed would protect wrongdoing. The judge listened. The courtroom waited. And the world didn't even know what was happening yet. Then quietly the ruling came. The judge ordered that certain sealed documents would be unsealed. Not all, not everything, but enough to reopen the conversation. And that's when the internet exploded, because what was inside those documents wasn't a verdict. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a list. It was something far more complex. Testimony, deposition, statement, fragments of truth without full conclusions. And that made the story even more mysterious. Some documents referenced individuals, not as defendants, not as criminals, but as names that appeared in testimonies. And this distinction is critical, because appearing in a document does not mean guilt. It means presence. It means association. It means mention. And the court made this clear. No criminal conclusions were made. No convictions were issued. No legal guilt was assigned. Yet the public reaction was immediate. Speculation exploded. Headlines spread. Social media ignited. And the legal system watched. Because this wasn't just a scandal. This was a true court case playing out in real time across the internet. The lawyers representing Epstein's estate responded quickly. They emphasized one point. These documents do not prove wrongdoing. They reflect testimony. They reflect claims. They reflect allegations. And in law, allegations are not verdicts. But the damage to public trust was already happening. What made this case even more complex was the time factor. Many of the alleged events occurred years, sometimes decades earlier. Evidence was limited. Memories faded. Witnesses aged. Records disappeared. And the court faced a terrifying question. How do you seek justice when time itself has erased half the story? This is where the true legal challenge emerged. Not emotion, not outrage, but evidence, because courts do not rule on feelings. They rule on facts, and facts were incomplete. As hearings continued, one thing became clear. This case was not about Epstein anymore. It was about the system. It was about accountability. It was about whether power can delay justice long enough for it to disappear. It was about whether power can delay justice long enough for it to disappear. The court reviewed financial records, settlement agreements, prior court rulings, confidential arrangements, and one critical question kept returning. Did the original legal process protect victims or protect power? This question haunted the courtroom. Because if justice fails once, it becomes harder to restore it later, the judge reminded the court. Our role is not to satisfy curiosity. Our role is to uphold the law. But the public response was different. People didn't want curiosity. They wanted answers. And answers were scarce. Then came the turning point. One filing revealed that certain individuals were formally requesting to have their names removed from the unsealed documents. Not because they were guilty, not because they were convicted, but because they feared public misinterpretation. The court now faced another dilemma. Protect reputations or preserve transparency. Then came the turning point. After days of argument, the ruling was announced. Some names would remain. Some would be redacted. Some documents would be released. Some would remain sealed. The court chose balance, not exposure, not concealment, but partial transparency. And yet, even partial truth can change everything, and this is what makes this a true court case like no other. No single criminal trial, no final conviction, no closing statement, just a legal maze, where every door leads to more questions. Now here's the final chilling truth. This true court case did not end with Epstein. It didn't end with the documents. It didn't end with the judge's ruling. It continues in courtrooms, in civil filings, in legal precedent, in future cases. Because the real question is, what happened back then? The real question is, can the legal system prevent it from happening again? And that is the real verdict. Not guilty, not innocent, not proven, not dismissed, but unresolved. If you stayed until the end, you now understand something most people don't. Some of the most important court cases don't end. They echo, they evolve, they reshape the law, and they leave behind one powerful lesson. Justice is not always about punishment. Sometimes it's about truth. Sometimes it's about accountability. Sometimes it's about making sure silence never wins again. If you want more true court cases, courtroom mysteries, and real legal stories that expose how justice truly works, subscribe to Courtroom Vault. Because some cases don't just tell a story, they change the world.